Alright, my name is Sean Fallon, and you're listening to episode 14, Clone Wars. Welcome to From First to Last. Where everybody knows. Hello again, and welcome again. My name is Sean Fallon. This is From First to Last. Today we're recording episode 14. So my guest today, he's a writer, he's an editor, he's from a galaxy far, far away. He's Kilo. How are you today, mate?
Fine, as well as I can be.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So what TV show did you choose for us today?
The animated series Star Wars The Clone Wars, after we got into a discussion about whether or not you should be seeing Rebels or not.
That's it, exactly. So, numbers-wise for Clone Wars, it ran for 121 episodes from October 2008 to March 2014. So, Kilo, what is your experience with Clone Wars?
Well, actually, I was kind of burnt when the movie came out. I actually completely skipped it, and I actually skipped the show for the most part. But I kept very recently, like maybe 2 years ago, when the big hype, when Disney bought Star Wars, all the big hype was coming on, and I was hearing about this new TV show Rebels. So I figured I would give the Clone Wars series a watch. So I found the watch order list online, and I went through all of them on Netflix, and it lived up to its bad reputation at the start, but as it went on, I think it's probably one of the strongest, animated series, American animated series I've seen in probably the last 5 years.
Oh, fantastic! Well, I did. Like I say, I put a poll on Twitter, and me and you started talking about it, like deciding on what TV show I wanted to watch. And I mean,
what ended up winning?
Oh, it was a draw between Rebels and Mr. Robot.
Oh, both excellent series.
I'll probably go for Rebels, actually, but we'll come back to that. But yeah, no, I mean, for me, like, Clone Wars, because there was 2 Clone Wars shows, because I remember there was one when I was in university, and it was...
the Genndy Tartakovsky series.
Yeah, so it was sort of... I was a big fan of, like, Powerpuff Girls and Samurai Jack, and those Clone War ones were, like, 4-minute little vignettes of, like, little fights, or some of them were in complete silence and stuff like that. And I remember buying the DVDs, and I used to, in my like third year of university when I was like 20, I would take magic mushrooms and watch them and just be completely immersed in them, and it was amazing. Then didn't watch anything, and then Clone Wars, this show came on, and I never really saw any of it until you mentioned it. And because I mean, a big part of that turned me off was my dislike of the prequels.
Oh,
I was sort of like, I'd washed my hands with that whole.
That was probably the reason
thing.
I didn't see it at all. It was probably the reason I completely skipped out on watching the Clone Wars movie. That and all the terrible reviews.
Yeah, God, yeah. Well, because I was gonna watch that for this, and then as soon as I mentioned it on Twitter, just like 100 people were just like, no, that film is trash. I think one person defended it, but everyone else said
that
it's
awful. It's bizarre. I don't understand. Yeah. I would say, as a standalone, nothing little 4-parter of season 1, it's okay. It's okay. Like there are some bits I kind of enjoy, but as an actual movie in theaters, what?
Yeah, that's from what I've heard.
And that's not even before I get into the Hutts, like Zero the Hutt and Stinky the Hutt. It's like,
right.
Yeah, it was weird. But I saw it in the context of going through the series through the watch order list. So it was, according to the chronological order I saw online, the movie wasn't even first. It was like third. So I was just going through it episodically. So, like, again, if you watch it as like a 4-parter, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's like it's a little nothing thing. But I can't imagine having actually gone to see that in theaters. That had to have been horrible.
Yeah, that's definitely the consensus I got. Yeah, like you say, a lot of the times, like when you look up the episodes of Clone Wars, it sort of gives you the option of like the order they were shown in or the narrative order.
The way I understand it is that Clone Wars, when it became more than what it began, Clone Wars, when you end up seeing it, it's very, very narrative driven.
Yeah.
And there are lots of interesting arcs that happen in Clone Wars. And then I think as the writers are going, they look at a previous status quo that just passed and say, hey, it would be nice if we did a story arc during this time period while this character is still alive before we killed him. So they go back and they do an episode, and that character who is, I imagine this must have been confusing if you were watching it weekly, but like there's a character who was, it was a big deal when he was assassinated, like in season whatever, and then in the next season he shows up because they were focusing on the stories.
Right. Okay, that's cool.
And like there's one of the first ones in the watch order is going through these 4 clones in boot camp, and these 4 clones in boot camp, and when we see those clones later on, one of them continues all the way up until like the last season. 2 of them die, and then like it. I imagine the writers were going, "Hey, let's look at these 4 clone troopers that we just saw killed off. How about we go back and flesh them all out?"
That's cool. I like that. I like that as a sort of sense of dedication to the story. Of
I
mean, it is very much in line with sort of prequel thinking in the sense of like the appeal of the prequels is to see where Yoda came from and see where Darth Vader came from, and so came from and stuff like that.
Clone Wars, from what I gather, George Lucas was involved pretty heavily, but not like from the writing. He would throw out ideas, and he would work, and the writers would work on those ideas. Like I imagine for the movies, he would come up, like on the spot. He came up with the droid factory part in Attack of the Clones on the spot, and no one argued with him, and they just did it.
Wow.
But like here in Clone Wars, he would come up with an idea that on paper is kind of ridiculous. Like he would say, "Hey, Coruscant is a giant city. How about we have like a giant Godzilla monster rampage through the city?" But instead of just doing that, the writers came up with an entire episode to set up the monster, to set up a situation of why it would be on Coruscant and why it would be rampaging. And it was actually a pretty entertaining little 2-parter of just fun cartoon action.
Cool. Well, that's good. I mean, I think that was always, like, I've obviously got a lot of love and respect for George Lucas, but I think that was always the thing of the prequels. There was no buffer.
He needed a buffer. He needs someone to discuss ideas with him.
Yeah, there was never that point where someone said, "Well, this is good, but maybe we could tweak it," just like someone just to give it that little bit of shine. A Lawrence Kasdan just to come in and say, "Yeah, cool, but I'll do it.
Yeah,
I like your ideas, but let me do it."
That's a big thing too. Is like when you get to see it when they bring Darth Maul back to life. I imagine in the storyboard it was like, "Oh, let's just bring Darth Maul and he's half robot." But they come up with this extensive arc where they set up Darth Maul's return ahead of time, and they bring in mystical elements, and they bring in a familial connection. So when it finally happens, and when Darth Maul is actually speaking, it feels like a big moment instead of, "Oh, I guess that happened."
Yeah, well, what's a cool thing we can do? Oh yeah, Darth Maul's a robot. Go. Yeah, that's cool. So, rewatching it, what did you think of the first episode, Ambush?
I think I kind of liked it better than I did initially. After the whole context, it is still ridiculous. It is still very cartoony. Yeah. But it was like having already seen the whole series, having seen how the series handles it, I kind of grew to appreciate things that happen later on, like the scene in the cave with Yoda and the clones. Like later on in Clone Wars, there will be actual episodes that actually go into the pathos and what goes through the minds of the clone troopers, like actually asking questions: Are these clones people? Do they matter? Do their lives matter? Ooh. So it was like interesting that even during the early episodes, which are just weird, wacky ideas, they would actually like give lip service to these ideas that would go on to become more meaningful later on.
That's good. I mean, like you say, very very cartoony, very simple sort of Saturday morning.
I have a question. What went through your mind the moment the episode started and the first thing you saw was Watto's race?
My stomach did fall a little bit because, like, I think they do very well in this episode to sort of move it away from, because I mean,
today.
Yeah, it was very. It's a big stereotype, isn't it? In Phantom Menace, it's quite a racial. It almost feels like a bit of an anti-Jewish stereotype. It's quite disgusting.
It's kind of like that mixed with like Middle Eastern. Like dealers that you see on like whenever in those old series, like when you when you walk through like a marketplace in Arabia, there would be like the carpet seller stereotype character.
Yes, very much so. They're sort of
mixed in with the Jewish stuff.
Yeah, sort of just like a shifty Middle Eastern character. But I thought they did well to.
And then he had like a pig nose and butterfly wings.
Yeah. But yeah, I think they did well in this episode to sort of make it, like, they moved away from that. It seemed a lot more Star Warsy, just like an alien race that sort of have their own little thing going on, and we just get a little taste of it.
Yeah.
It's still, with it being one of the first images, I was like, "Ooh, is that what we're getting into? Is that the
Like
tone?"
when I was rewatching it, I forgot that was the first thing you see after the narrator speaks. It's like just the Watto people.
Like, oh, okay, this is what we're doing. Okay, fine, let's see what happens. I will say, I absolutely loved the narrator, that whole thing. I love that sort of newsreel Starship Troopers thing.
Yeah, it goes on throughout the entire series, and it's actually the same voice actor as Yoda. I'm not sure if you could tell.
No. Well, that's cool. I just love that.
He's a pretty good voice actor. His name is Tom Kane, I believe, and he voices a lot of roles in this series.
Oh yeah, no, I know that name.
He voices Yoda. He voices C-3PO in this
cool.
series. Oh wait, no. I was thinking he voices C-3PO in certain video games. For this series, I think they actually did get Anthony Daniel back.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, that was definitely something, like, not really with the first episode, but just kind of when I was looking at Clone Wars. I saw, like, Liam Neeson comes back into it, and just loads of really famous names, and I was like, oh, that's really cool.
For the movie, they brought back Christopher Lee and Samuel L. Jackson to voice Count Dooku and Mace Windu, but they did not return for the TV show.
Oh, okay, well, that's not good.
But you could tell that the voice actor for Count Dooku was really close, wasn't it?
Yeah, no, he's great. I mean, I love that character.
Like Christopher Lee, when he was asked to come back and he listened to clips from the show, he asked, "Why did you ask me to come back? This guy's fine."
Well, I mean, that actor must have loved that. That's definitely the big seal of approval, to have Christopher Lee be like, "No, this guy can be me. That's fine." That's awesome.
Yeah, it was just sad now that Christopher Lee's passed. He's actually voiced certain characters that Christopher Lee has played before he passed.
Oh, right. Okay, that's pretty amazing. Yeah, no, all that stuff was quality. All the sort of, it never felt like anyone was doing like an impersonation. You know, it wasn't. I think they really nailed the voices down.
In terms of voices, one thing I want to mention is I think D. Bradley Baker, the voice of the Clone Troopers.
God, he's got a lot of work.
Yes. Did you notice that, like, this is more apparent in later episodes and not so much this one, but he actually, like, gives individual Clone Troopers their own specific inflections and different cadences and speaking patterns in order to make them distinct, that they were all born from the same base, but they all grew to become different people.
That is impressive.
Like, you notice when they took off their helmets, they all had different hairstyles.
Yes, I was like, cool, that's a very good idea.
I mentioned this on Twitter, but there's an entire story arc just focused on the clones and them dealing with a deranged general.
Okay.
And there's like entire sequences where it's just the clones talking.
That's amazing.
7 clones, and so he's voicing 7 different characters, all with the same basic voice. Like, he can't go crazy and make him go nuts and make him sound differently. Yep. Like, he has to actually make these sound, like, they all have the same vocal folds in their throats and everything, so they have to sound close enough.
Yeah, they all have to have like that New Zealand accent of Tamara Morrison.
Yeah,
that's very impressive. That's amazing. Well, I did find that in this one, like, you could, like, when the clones were talking, like the three clones that were with Yoda, you could, like you say, it was very slight, but when they had the helmets on, they were talking, it sounded like they were different people.
Yeah, like twins.
Yeah.
Like, you could, like, if you're talking to 2 twins, you can kind of tell which one is which.
Yeah.
Kind of, if you grow to know them.
Yeah, that's it, definitely. I think that's very impressive, and that, to put that work in as well is very good. I mean, whoever voices the battle droids must have the same thing of just having to, like, constantly...
Oh, what did you think of that humor?
I'm not a big fan. Not a fan of the battle droids. I was never a fan.
It's one of the most bizarre things in this series. When you see it, the battle droids are like, it's a frequent thing. I'm not sure how far it goes. I think it still keeps on going all the way up into the final season. But the battle droids, I think they tried to make it funny for the kids.
Yeah.
But later on, it just kind of becomes horrifying, because these droids are later on they beg for mercy, and then they still get butchered. And then there's one particular point later on in the series where the droids are running away from Anakin, and one of them just stops and he says, "What's the point?" And he just gives up. He stops in the middle of the hallway and just stops and allows himself to die. Wow. I think they were trying to be funny, and it's just like, you just stare with your mouth open, like, what? Yeah, what?
It's horrifying.
like this was more comedic, but later on it gets actually kind of maudlin.
Yeah, no.
With some of the Clone Wars.
Well, that's incredible. Well, I
Oh,
mean,
like I just got promoted, like stuff like that happens. It's like,
yeah.
what's going on? Like, what? They thought this would be funny?
Yeah, that is true. There is a yeah, because I mean the thing with the droids as well is they have established in Star Wars that the droids have personalities. You know, it's like if you watch C-3PO die, it would be sad because he's well, you know, obviously he's not a person, but he has a personality, he has a role, and then if you kind of like transport that and put it on the battle droids, it is like watching many people die all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Which I'm guessing probably in the story focus they were going, we're going to humanize the clone troopers. We should probably do that
Yeah,
with the droid, but let's make it funny. Let's make
yeah.
it funny. Like let's pepper it into scenes so that the kids don't get bored, and it just becomes this what?
Yeah, that's amazing. Well, I think that was the thing, like with the battle droids being introduced in Phantom Menace. I think that was Lucas's sort of thing of like, oh, we don't want to see people getting killed, but it's okay to kill all these battle droids. But yeah, like I say, at the same time, he's also established that the droids have hopes and fears and stuff like that.
Oh
And then they're
yeah,
just getting massacred.
like
Crazy.
those like the original trilogy when that one droid's getting the brand on his foot.
Yeah, in Jabba's palace. I did, no. Yeah. Yeah, no, I think definitely as sort of like kids entertainment or just like a quick throwaway bit of entertainment, I think this episode I actually really enjoyed it. I think it had all the trademarks, yeah.
Now that I didn't have it in my head, oh, this is gonna suck after, because this takes in my order. This came after the movie.
Yeah.
So I was like, oh, this is gonna be. Even though some of the episodes earlier were good, but those were later season ones. So I was like, and I did kind of enjoy it, but I enjoyed it much more now that I know the context and see how it all fits and everything.
That's cool. I mean, I did sort of when
Especially since later on in the series they do go back to the Toydarians.
Oh, okay. Well, that's cool. Well, yeah.
It's actually tied into the Darth Maul arc in a way I won't spoil.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah, because I think I'm definitely gonna have a watch of this. I think I might watch all this before I watch Rebels. I mean, it's 20 minute episodes. You just chuck one on all the time. I thought the animation was gorgeous. I've always sort of loved that with Star Wars, the idea, and I know this was Lucas's intention, that everything should look lived in and a little bit worn and a little bit dirty. And I think they do
like
that
you saw
really well.
the armors. Like I think this was also went to just make the clone troopers look different from each other.
Yeah.
But each of their armors were dirty in different ways.
Yeah, and also they all had different tattoos and stuff. Like, you know, when they take the helmets
Yeah,
off,
and they put like markings. They put like spray painted markings on their helmets and stuff.
Yeah, that's a cool.
It makes
that's a
you
cool
think
touch.
that these are not like green recruits. These guys have been fighting for a while.
Yeah, that's it. And I think as well that sort of, because I think Star Wars is the masterclass in very subtle world building. Like, I like the thing of like the clone troopers like talking about the droids and calling them clankers and calling them rollies, and it's like, okay, this has been going on for a while, long enough for them to establish slang.
And it's also slang for the audience. It's not too insane. Like I imagine there's a story behind calling the Vietnamese Charlie, but when you see that in the movie, they don't ever go into that. But here, you're like, oh, okay, they're clankers because they clank. Oh, the rolling droids are rollies.
Yeah, that's it. And it's just sort of like, okay, we instantly get that, and I think that's really good. And even like this whole concept of the Clone Wars, I mean, it does come from like there's like 2 lines of dialogue in the original film, which I doubt Lucas had any intention of ever fleshing out. It's just like, oh yeah, I fought with your father in the Clone Wars. And I remember being in Mrs. Molyneux's class in like junior school when I was about 8 or 9, reading the novelization of Star Wars, and when he mentioned the Clone Wars, just sitting there and be like, oh my god, is that like loads of clones of Obi-Wan Kenobi fighting and all that? And I had it in my head, this mad idea, and then obviously to see it now fleshed out in a completely different way, I think that was the sort of the joy of Star Wars.
Yeah, a lot of things were better left unsaid. But I think Clone Wars, the way I've pitched it to some friends is that I see the Clone Wars as a massive apologism for the prequels.
Yeah.
There is a lot of episodes of Clone Wars that seem to have conceptually been a writer wanting to say, let's redeem this stupid idea from the prequels. Like there's an episode called Heroes on Both Sides. You know that ridiculous line in the episode 3.
There were heroes on both sides.
There are heroes on both sides. So they actually made an entire like multi-part episode going into the people who switched over to the separatists for ideological reasons, and we go into like the separatist Senate, and we see them that they're just as scared.
Yeah.
They're just as scared, and they're like putting all their hopes into Dooku because they genuinely see him as someone who can lead them to a better future.
Right.
And this is like they actually like go into that, and they actually have like actual ideological arguments with like Anakin and Ahsoka characters. I guess ironically, even though those two are like the main characters of the Clone Wars series, we didn't see at all in these two episodes.
Yeah, no, that's it. So
that's why I was that's why I was half suggesting, instead of doing these 2 episodes, I was suggesting possibly doing the movie and then doing the last episode of season 5, which was the last aired episode. Because those 2 would also make like because it's the beginning and the ending of Ahsoka's story in Clone Wars.
Ah, okay.
But again, there was also this option too, but it also saved you from having to watch the movie.
That's it. So thank you for that. I'm trying to think if there's anything else really with that first episode. Yeah, no, it was very fun, and I love Ventress. I think Ventress is a great character, like the lady Sith lady. I think.
Oh, then you're really gonna like her arcs later on in the they actually they show her backstory, but like I know that sounds like they actually go into what makes her tick.
Yeah.
And they actually give her actual story arcs where she actually questions her allegiances and actually goes through growth. And of course, she has wacky adventures like this one episode where she just gets into a train heist with Kid Boba Fett.
Okay, well, see, I can't really argue with that. That sounds amazing.
And Bosk is there too.
Oh, awesome. Okay, I'm all over that. I think like Yoda as a character is interesting because he's such a weird character to like from Empire and Return of the Jedi. You just get this idea of like I think to sort of like just rag on the prequels for a little bit. I mean, I think obviously one of the things people hate about the prequels was it removed mystery from Star Wars. You know, it sort of said, "Oh, you like Darth Vader?" But I don't know if you've seen that Patton Oswalt.
Yes,
stand-up,
you want some rock salt.
Yeah, exactly, and it's like
That's why I think I like Clone Wars because the way they approached it is like, okay, this is ruined, this is spoiled. Let's do our best to salvage as much as we can.
Yeah, and definitely
like the Clone Wars could never have happened without the prequels.
Yeah, I mean that's it. I guess that's the price, isn't it? You gotta take one with the other.
But I do commend the directors, writers, and voice actors for they did the best they can, and I think they knocked it out of the park.
Yeah, I think there is that thing with I mean, like I say, with Yoda, like having his backstory could have been a bit of a mess, but I enjoyed. I feel like this episode was very much the wacky jumping around lightsaber Yoda. Whereas the final episode, which we'll come to in a moment, was very much like the first episode is the sort of jumping around, fighting Count Dooku, Yoda of Attack of the Clones. Whereas the last episode, which we can get into now, is very much you get an idea of why Yoda shuts himself away on Dagobah and why he goes a little bit mad as well. You know, like that.
Yeah.
So what did you think of the final episode watching that again?
I at first I was worried that you would have a problem or that just going into it without the previous 2 episodes of this because this is technically a 3-parter, 4-part. The way Clone Wars does multi-parters is very strange in that they would come up with a kernel of an idea. And then it would be 4 episodes of one idea, but each episode would be different in a way to make them standalone, I guess, because you know that maximum that every episode could be someone's first.
Yeah, that's cool.
So, but I was kind of worried because you saw those Force priestesses. I was worried that not having seen the previous episode would trip you up or trip me up since I haven't seen it in a while. But I felt they did a good the narration and going straight into it. They did a pretty good job of just letting you go right into it.
Yeah, that's it. And I mean, a big part of this podcast has been like the other week we did Friday Night Lights, and I hadn't seen a single episode of Friday Night Lights, and just went in, and I think that's the point of seeing how the show just works and stuff like that. And I think it worked really well. And you did mention this to me when you said about doing Clone Wars as bookends of the Yoda story. You know, to have him be sort of like quite jovial and fun-loving and a bit wacky in the first episode, to here where it's almost like the
Jedi
war,
Master Yoda.
Yeah, and the war has taken its toll on him. You know, he's and the animation's gotten better, so you can really see sort of like, you know,
like the Force race, like the Sith race.
Yeah, like that was so cool. And those sort of cool, scary images, and Yoda being this little dude, but like standing up and just being like, afraid I am not, just like getting into it and just not giving a fuck. And I love that. I thought it was genius.
Which is again different because like the first episode they were going like, oh look, a small tiny green creature. He is tiny.
Yeah, that was it. Like, oh, how are we going to know who we're looking for? He's a little green, shriveled, whatever. But then this one, you're like, no, what? Once upon a time, he was this great warrior, but the Sith just wore him down. That feels like it's just like he wins. He doesn't break, but he's breaking. By this point, he's ready. It's starting.
And like
to
by the end, he
him.
makes an epiphany. Like by the end of the episode, he makes an epiphany that because everyone who sees the prequels comes away thinking, oh, the Jedi. Even people who like the prequels, they walk around saying, oh, the Jedi Order is at best horribly incompetent or willfully incompetent. They're really bad at their jobs. To the point where them falling is the inevitable conclusion.
Yeah,
if it's not the Sith, they would have fallen on their own. And I think by the end of this, I think Yoda realizes that.
Yeah, and that's it. And I do like that whole thing of just like when they're talking about winning the war, and he's like, no one wins. No one wins the war.
Yeah. I think that after this big thing, Mace Windu's first thing he would ask is, does this help us win the war? Just kind of sums up why the Jedi they're destined to fall.
Yeah, that's it.
At least this iteration of the Jedi.
No, definitely, very much. And I think for one thing as well, so many concepts of this episode and stuff, so deep for a kids' cartoon, like real sort of big ideas, which...
Yeah, and they bring in EU concepts that I think no child would probably have ever known about.
Like Darth
Bane.
Yeah.
Which was, I think, a good thing, because, Mark Hamill does a voice in probably every single Cartoon Network show.
Yeah.
Because we know him as, like, the big Luke Skywalker guy, but the way he actually makes his living nowadays, well, a big portion is probably Star Wars stuff, but, like, the way he works is, like, as a voice actor. Like, he was Skips in regular show and stuff like that.
Yep, Joker.
So it was kind of yeah, so it's like inevitable that he would do something in Clone Wars since it was a Cartoon Network show.
Yeah.
But I like that they saved that for something big.
Yeah, they didn't sort of do like they didn't make him come back and play Luke or anything like that. He comes back to play like the
Even though Luke was in this
evil.
episode. Luke was in this episode, technically.
Oh yeah,
crying baby.
That's true. Yes. Okay, that is true. I don't think he played that. I was quite happy actually. Mark Hamill being there, and then Tim Curry. Oh, Tim Curry was
Palpatine, because he took over the role of Palpatine after the death of let me try to find the voice actor. He took over after the death of the voice actor who was playing Palpatine during the final season.
Oh, right.
So
I mean, well, Tim Curry was always like, I remember growing up, he'd always be something on it. He was like the bad guy in Mighty Max, and he was Thornberry in the Wild Thornberries and stuff like that. And he was always definitely a voice I looked out for. And it's weird because I think he's sort of been replaced by Mark Hamill as the voice you sort of look out for.
Yes, because he does a lot. Mark Hamill does a lot of great villainous roles,
He's tons of villains.
Like Fire Lord Ozai, like he was the final villain in Avatar.
Oh, was he?
Stuff like that. Yeah.
Yeah, it's.
I found the voice. His name was Ian Abercrombie. He was the voice actor for Palpatine for most of the series, but he died during the recording of the final few seasons.
Right.
So during the final few seasons, when you see it, there's actually going to be certain episodes where it's like, I think because of the order they produced them in the order, like there's one episode where it's Abercrombie, then it's Curry, then it's Abercrombie, then it's Curry. Then there's one episode where when he begins to speak, it is Abercrombie, then the last few lines it is Curry.
Oh wow! Oh, that's crazy. That's weird. But yeah, no, I am a huge, like, when I rewatched the prequels before Force Awakens, the thing that stood out for me is the only character that I feel works and does anything is Palpatine. I think that's the one character that Lucas managed to just lock in. And if you saw,
and especially because of Ian McDiarmid as well.
Oh yeah, and he's just amazing. He's just so slimy and just so charming and just the full devil. And then I think that was really cool. I was really happy to actually see him in an episode of this where like Tim Curry's just like totally chewing the scenery, and he's animated with just like his mouth's trying to get away from him. He's just like...
Yeah, well, we can't see his eyes when he's with the thing, so they have to give us something.
Yeah, that's it. Just like
and it works well.
Dirty teeth and just, I love it. That was great. I think, like I was saying, like, it was cool to have that thing of Yoda be all like you say, little green, fun and all that. And then to have him all serious, all very grim, the war's taking a toll. And he's, like you say, he's begun to see that the Clone War is nothing. There's a bigger thing going on, that he's been led down the garden path.
Yes, and like that's actually at the beginning of this story arc. That the episodes we didn't see when we just skipped to it is that when he starts hearing Qui-Gon Jinn, because Qui-Gon, they mentioned him in this episode.
Yeah.
The previous episodes is it's the crux of the earlier episodes, but they only barely mentioned it here. Is that Yoda is going to learn the ability to how to come back as a Force ghost.
Yeah, which is cool.
But he's learning it. But he finds this out because he keeps hearing Qui-Gon's voice, and all the other Jedi think that he's just going nuts. Like they never even for a second entertained the idea that he could be correct.
Which is odd, because obviously Yoda is never wrong.
Yeah, so like everyone immediately starts they immediately doubt him. Which again is part of a reason of why something's wrong with the Jedi.
Well, yeah, that's it. Yeah, exactly. That makes perfect sense. I think it was cool at how they sort of went on the, because one thing that the prequels, or at least Phantom Menace, had done was take the Force and make it less
midi-chlorians.
Yeah, so it became medical instead of mystical, and I think this really, like you were saying before about the show trying to fix problems. This very much positions the Force as being like religion, magic, mysticism, occult, all those sort of mad magical things, as opposed to
there's
blood type.
There's an earlier episode that's, I think, pretty controversial among people who see the series, which is just a 3-parter that is set on this mystical planet where we see these beings who purport to be the actual embodiments of the Force, and it goes very metaphysical, and then it's like the dead come and they speak to them and they see visions of the future, and Anakin actually sees himself become Darth Vader. He gets the memory erased, but like it gets very mystical to the point where they everything that Obi-Wan thought he knew about the Force, it's all gone out the window.
Right.
I imagine a lot of children were very confused by that.
Yes, probably.
But that was the thing that Clone Wars, after a while, after it became, I guess, after they realized people are just it's gonna get the ratings because it's Star Wars, they just kind of just let go and just started doing all sorts of they just started doing a bunch of very heavy concepts. Like there's one episode where they actually acknowledge that Anakin was raised a slave and would be filled with rage and all sorts of
wow.
Like the idea that he was once a slave would be messing up with his head now that he's growing up.
That's fascinating. That's very interesting, and again, quite heady for a Saturday morning cartoon.
Yeah, it was very, and then there was one episode. This is the episode. I'm not sure if you heard that Forrest Whitaker's character in Rogue One is a character who originated in Clone Wars.
Yeah, I did read that the other week, which sounds pretty cool.
In that story arc, which is not one of the better ones, they don't really deal with the concept that well. They kind of begin to explore the line between what makes you a freedom fighter and what makes you a terrorist. They don't really commit to it, but yeah. But they do way more with that concept than I've seen in other series.
Yeah, no, I mean that's fascinating. Like it was when I was watching this, I was just sort of like, it made me think back to when I was a kid watching cartoons. I remember always just being a bit pissed off when I was watching them, where there were never any real stakes. No one ever died, and it was always just like friendship was the real treasure and all that shite.
And I think there is a place for that,
yeah.
Too. But yeah, you do need to switch it up every once in a while.
So it was cool to sort of have something like this that could create conversation and sort of put ideas in a kid's head and sort of go from there, which I think, and not patronize them. Kids are super clever. We don't give them enough credit.
That's one thing I think they really make good use out of the clones, is that the clones there are certain clones we really, really do get to care about. But here's the thing, the very nature of the clones, and because we don't see any clone troopers in the actual movies, a lot of them die. A lot of ones that we have entire seasons of investment with, they get killed very quickly. So they kind of avoid that, where you're like wondering, hey, this is a war, why is no one dying?
Yeah.
There's clone troopers, specific ones with names and personalities, and they just die.
Well, the other interesting thing as well I put in my notes actually is when Yoda's giving that cool, very Yoda-y speech where he's talking to the 3 guys, and he's like, you're thinking about your weapons, you need to think about this, and so on and so on and so on. And there is that sort of like teamwork thing. But then in the back of my mind, I was like, yeah, but the clones do betray them in the end. the clones will hunt the Jedi down. Like there is
They
that sense of pathos of like, oh, this is all good now. This will all turn
Yeah,
when.
that's an idea that I've seen played. They've actually played with that idea later on.
Yeah.
Even though this is before Order 66,
Yeah.
there is an. I'll just throw out this idea so we don't confuse the people listening too much.
Okay.
There is an actual story arc where a clone finds out about Order 66.
Okay.
He finds out about it early,
Interesting.
and it's this very it's like one of those movies. Well, Clone Wars very much plays around with genre.
Uh-huh.
Like there are some episodes where you can tell the director had watched this movie right beforehand. This is like the one where like those type of movie where like someone is at the victim of a conspiracy and no one believes them.
Like Parallax View or 3 Days
Something
of the Condor.
like that. Like
yeah.
not exactly, but like certain things like that. Like there's this clone trooper. He's like no one believes him. He knows about Order 66. He knows. So he just starts going around and he goes to the Camino and he goes to where they're growing baby clones and he finds out everything.
Wow.
And like no one believes him.
That's interesting. That sounds awesome.
Yeah, so they do explore that kind of, and they not to spoil, but in Rebels too,
Yeah.
we do meet some older clone troopers, and they do reflect on Order 66. Like the main character played by Kanan.
Yeah.
I'll just leave it in like his master. He saw clones kill him, so it's a major thing that he does not trust clones.
Interesting. Again, heady stuff. It's good.
Yeah, like you don't expect it going in after the prequels, do you?
No, that's it. I mean, the prequels were so dumbed down and.
But like,
dumb.
there are legitimately interesting ideas that were just wasted.
Yeah, I think that is the thing with Star Wars, though, more than some other fantasy properties or sci-fi properties, where from what you get, like the characters you get, the worlds you get, people do want to always explore and go further and sort of say, well, why is this? Because there's some things like Lord of the Rings is pretty much cut and dry. It is what it is. Like you get the histories and it's there. Star Wars people will like, a minor character will get like a whole fan base, that will go. I mean, I know like Force Awakens, the
like the Death Sticks guy has a Wikipedia page. The guy who says you want to buy, he has a Wikipedia page that goes into his backstory.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, the only thing I can think of closest to that, like recently, would be Mad Max Fury Road, like that sort of world building where you just get a little taste of it, but there's a sense of a vast world that you want to explore.
Which is a bit unfortunate if you read about the controversy regarding the Furiosa prequel comic.
I did read them. Yeah, they weren't great.
That's why it's like a fine line. Sometimes when you go into that, you kind of ruin it, and then sometimes you have to. It's a very fine line when you do that kind of stuff.
It is. I mean, I think sometimes it's best to not know, just to sort of speculate and think about it, and then
which again goes back to the prequels.
Yeah, exactly.
You need to know all that stuff.
Yes. Did we need to know where Boba Fett came from? Did we need to know where the Darth Vader was a pod racer? Yeah. Let's see what else have I've got in my notes. Yeah, heady concepts, very good stakes. I mean, obviously, Anakin beheading Dooku. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah, that's one thing I think I'm kind of a little sad that we didn't see any Anakin episodes in this, is that the Clone Wars actually makes him a character I believe would exist. He's a character I would believe would fall to the dark side instead of... no disrespect, but he wasn't Hayden Christensen.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's it. There is that very much a sense of you're just told in the prequels. Well, you're told in the prequels that he's best friends with Obi-Wan, but you never really see it. And you're told that he falls to the dark side. No, here in the
Clone Wars, they're like legitimately... you believe that these two consider each other brothers.
Yeah, which is good. I mean...
In the Clone Wars, there's this one episode, multi-parter, which of all things references Cube.
Wow.
I'll just throw that out there.
That's awesome.
Where Anakin believes that Obi-Wan is dead, and he just goes completely nuts, wanting to get vengeance for him.
See, that's cool.
Yeah, and it's like and then there's like they actually go into stuff like his relationship with Padme.
Yeah.
How difficult it would be to keep that secret. How he would obviously get jealous the moment the Anakin that we see would obviously get jealous the moment Padme talks to anyone.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They actually explore all that stuff, and then of course they have scenes where like he's just reckless and just kill happy. Ooh. Like I'll just throw out this one.
Yeah, go for it.
There's one story that is a multi-parter that goes a bit into Obi-Wan's backstory.
Yeah.
But there's a climax where the villain is going to kill a bunch of people if they don't let him escape. So they wonder, you have a dilemma here. You kill me, and you save everyone, but the people you care about from your backstory will see what you've done, and they will always have this memory of you killing a person in cold blood.
Yeah.
Or I escape and I will do my evil.
Right.
And then Anakin just comes and stabs him right through the heart nonchalantly and says, "Hey, this guy, what were you guys doing standing around here? This guy was going to blow everything up." He just stabs him right in the heart with his lightsaber.
Whoa. Okay, I'm gonna start watching this show.
So, like, it's stuff like that, like little bits of character.
Yeah.
Like, it would make sense that Anakin would be like this brash guy, and he would approach the Gordian knot by slicing it into a billion pieces.
Yeah, that's it. That's very, and yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Have you watched on YouTube? There's Belated Media do like what if the prequels were good?
Yes, I've seen them.
Yeah, that's a fascinating, because there is definitely
kernels of good ideas. Yes.
Yeah, there's lots of interesting things, and I think this show seems to have the sort of the same idea of like, what if we can sort of fix this afterwards from afar and just sort of see what we can do.
Yeah, because the damage was done. It's like the beginning of the famous Red Letter Media video. It can never go away. This will have always happened.
Yeah, that's it. And
it can never be undone, but you can make the best out of a bad situation.
And that's it. And that does seem to be, from what you've said and from watching a little bit of Clone Wars that does seem to be what they've gone for here. Okay.
And then of course there's the wacky episodes, like Jar Jar does show up in Clone Wars. I'm just gonna throw that out there. Jar Jar does show up in Clone Wars.
And do they manage to?
He does. He has his own centered episodes. They do give Jar Jar a girlfriend. I know I've immediately lost a bunch of people who have been almost won over.
Yeah.
They do give Jar Jar a girlfriend. They do have episodes where Jar Jar has to outsmart people. There are episodes that there's an episode where Jar Jar and C-3PO have to team up, and it's just Ahmed Best and Anthony Daniels both being as dense as possible.
Okay, that sounds pretty painful, but the other stuff you said sounds really good. So
yeah, it's like a mixed bag.
Yeah, that's it. That sounds about right. Okay, anything else you'd like to add about Clone Wars, the first or the last episodes? Or, I mean, how did you, like, just watching this first episode and this last episode in a vacuum, did that really show you how far the show came from beginning to end, from first to last?
Yes, and like what we discussed is that Yoda wasn't running around. He didn't just start shooting Force lightning and you know, he didn't pull out his lightsaber once, even when the Wraith started appearing to him.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And even during the vision of Sidious, he didn't immediately go to violence. That was even the point, is that he forsook violence in the vision that Sidious gave him, and that's how he was able to triumph.
Yeah, I mean that.
And then the first one, he was jumping around.
Yeah, I mean that whole sequence with the bridge where he's got the choice to save Anakin or, you know, attack Sidious, and he saves Anakin and gets blasted himself and then lets the thing fall. So he's like, making the sacrifice to kill Sidious. Very good stuff. It's
like they think about, like, that's what the dark side is. You make one tiny crack and it expands outwardly.
Yeah,
and that's
definitely.
why Yoda sacrifices that. He doesn't allow the crack, no matter what, even if it means having to go live in Dagobah for 30 years or however long it was.
Exactly, which is cool, and it's good. It's a good thing to like. I think now next time I see Empire Strikes Back, I will sort of think of this and be like, oh yeah, so that's how Yoda sort of went a bit mad.
Yeah, and that's like the good things that having the backstory illuminated for. Like, I know there are some people who, the moment they see Vader, it's kind of ruined for them. Going, yippee, and I'm a person, my name's... That's in their head forever, and it ruins it. But they're like little bits now that I've seen Clone Wars. And I do see the original trilogy, I think, okay. But in a good way.
That's good. It sort of colours in. Because I think, like we've sort of said, there's filling in backstory to enhance story, and then there's just doing things for the sake of doing them. And a lot of the stuff, really, from what I've seen here, what I've heard here, this feels more like it's good colouring in. It's not just like, what's the origin of Yoda's coat? You know, just like shite for shite's sake, which I think is good. Okay, anything else you'd like to add concerning this show?
I just got to throw in that I kind of lament a little bit that we didn't get to talk about Ahsoka at all, because she really is, I think, when you see the character of Ahsoka, is probably it's the thing that makes the entire series work as an overarching thing. Yeah. So I'm a bit sad we didn't get to touch on her at all.
No, but
I think she's the Anakin's apprentice, which was another idea that George Lucas just came up with. Like George Lucas said, let's give Anakin an apprentice, and they're like, what? He didn't have one in 3.
Yeah.
So they gave her this big, long, emotional arc. And the reason when they explain why she is not in Episode 3 is it's brutal, it's devastating.
Okay. And is she in Rebels?
Spoiler, but yes.
Okay, cool. Because I was watching a bit of the Star Wars Celebration Europe, and where like the actress who plays her came out on stage, and there were just like cosplayers and people going wild, and I just had no concept of the character at all. So
yeah, that's a very strange thing, because I know there are some people who, when they hear the name Ahsoka, they think of the movie Roll Their Eyes, or there are so many that have no idea who she even is.
Yeah.
But she is like this big embodiment of like this new rebirth of Star Wars. She's like this big connective tissue. Right. Clone Wars does a very excellent job, I feel, in the better episodes of making her someone like the mentor student relationship between Anakin and Ahsoka is very believable.
Yeah.
To the point where there were I know people who were devastated by the Rebels season 2 finale where Vader finally meets Ahsoka.
Ooh. Okay, cool. Don't tell me anymore.
And like 5 years ago, the idea, like people were joking, making casual jokes about Vader killing Ahsoka, and that's why she's not there. And there were people throwing out those jokes. Like 5 years ago, the idea that anyone would actually care about this confrontation was absurd.
Yeah.
But I think it's not just because of her like the reason. It's not just she didn't just appear in Rebels and then everyone immediately liked her because she was portraying Rebels. Like people liked her because although Rebels does do a very good job, I feel, of establishing her.
Mm-hmm.
But like they have connections to the better episodes of hers in Clone Wars.
Right. Okay, cool. I've got work to do. Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds really cool. Okay, well, I think we sort of got as much as we can out of Clone Wars. So, Kilo, where can people find you on the internet?
My Twitter is at OilyWhisper68. It's a random name I got from when I signed up on Xbox Live, and I just that name was just so random I had to keep it.
Cool, it's a good one.
So that's mainly where I hang out, just talking about nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Most of my work really just kind of is mainly there or helping out with fan subbing of certain series that probably are never going to be licensed.
Oh, okay.
Like you like Japanese superhero series.
Yeah.
You've probably seen me flooding your feed with lots of those images. Is this what? Right?
Yeah. It all looks very, very mad.
Yeah. Like I remember you favorited that one about the fascist blimps.
Yeah. Big fan of that.
Yeah, it's like it's that kind of stuff is just really madcap and with genuine heart into it. But it's like the legal status is kind of gray, so I help out with the fan subs of those.
Oh, fantastic! Well, that's really cool. It's good to sort of spread
so
something overseas.
So I just basically help out with editing those.
Beautiful. Okay, cool. Well, you can find this podcast at First to Last Pod, or email me directly at fromfirsttolastpodcast@gmail.com. My personal Twitter is equiatic_bind. Other than that, stay tuned for next week when we'll have, I don't know what we're going to have. It's a surprise. We'll work it out then. Kilo, thanks for coming on to the show.
No problem.
My name... Oh, of course, thank you. And you'll have to think of maybe when Rebels ends, you can come back and do Rebels, or we'll find another Star Wars.
That's going to be very bittersweet.
Yeah,
That's going to be very bittersweet when that happens.
Okay, maybe we won't look forward to that. Awesome. Well, I'm going to go start watching Clone Wars. My name is Sean Fallon. This has been From First to Last. Goodbye.